I woke up this morning wanting to talk about overrated watch brands, the type that we see advertised excessively on Hot and Key with sponsor posts. But then I thought to myself, instead of doing that, while we expose some brands that aren't getting the attention that they deserve, how about a few brands that are underrated? Surely there's some watch brands that are providing incredible watches with high-quality craftsmanship, interesting mechanical movements, and perhaps even cool brand heritage at reasonable prices. After a quick pondering, I came up with a few that matched this criteria. So without further ado, let's get started. Fairer is a new British watch brand that was founded in 2015, so they don't have a ton of experience in the market. When I think of British watches, I think of Bremont and Christopher Ward. Bremont is in another price league, but Christopher Ward is targeting a similar market segment as Fairer. There's a huge difference between Fairer and CW though. Fairer makes colorful and original watches, while CW makes somewhat bland and boring watches. A few years back, I really used to think that Christopher Ward was a hidden gem in the British watch industry, but due to some of their recent releases, I feel they've gone redundant, concentrating on profit margin instead of catering to what us enthusiasts are looking for in a watch. Fairer has really stolen the spotlight for me, and if you mingle a little bit online with other collectors, they also mimic this sentiment. Of course, Fairer is a business like all watch brands who need to generate profit, but they've turned their focus to the desires of collectors. Fairer's watches are sized incredibly well, and they tend to also offer multiple size options within the same collection. This gives the opportunity for almost anyone to find a watch that fits them really well. Not only does Fairer implement some gorgeous pastel and bright color tones on their dials, but they also design totally unique-looking watches that are not just clones of other established brands. This, in my opinion, the key to success, and essentially the opposite of what a brand like Baltic Watches is doing by creating homage watches with small design shifts. Here's another somewhat new brand on the scene out of France and founded in 1948. I say somewhat new because the brand has been dormant for some time until it was recently acquired by French watchmaker Montres Amber de Morteau in 2009. I really love Yema watches. I think they're incredible at their price points. They hit the mark with the aspects I was aiming for in our intro, which is high-quality craftsmanship, unique designs, and interesting movements. Yema lets me down in one category though, and that's their sales model, which works on an odd tier-based system. The system seems to be another way to create artificial demand, and coming from a new relatively unknown watch brand, it makes me cringe inside. I think their watches are good enough to speak for themselves, and a traditional sales model would have been less pretentious and more welcoming. Politics out of the way, the watches themselves are outstanding, and a very important feature on all of their watches is the strict use of in-house movements. While some brands have been leaning away from in-house and moving to mass-produced movements like Swiss ETA, Yema has decided to stay true to form and heritage by creating their own unique mechanics to run their line of watches. They have both a standard grade, which they coined as a more generic line of movements produced by them, and a manufacturer grade, which is reserved for their more premium line of watches and boasts higher accuracy and higher quality materials, as well as a more detailed finishing process. Here's a brand that's been around a while. Founded in 1889 and originally focusing on dress watches, they eventually became known for creating some of the most iconic dive watches in the world. Although they've been around for quite some time and have launched some notable divers like the Sub 300, they're a relatively under-the-radar brand. Doxa is a favorite among watch enthusiasts and collectors due to the brand's deep heritage and cool retro-looking watches, but they're rarely seen worn by those outside of this tight circle of connoisseurs. Doxa is essentially now known solely for their dive watches, having shifted from dress watches to dive watches in the 1960s with the launch of the original Sub 300 in 1967. The Sub 300 is the watch that put the brand on the map due to its patented rotating bezel and iconic bright orange dial, both improving the function and legibility of the watch when deep-sea diving. In the 1960s, they even collaborated with renowned diver Jacques Cousteau, who brought the brand some serious exposure from many forms of media and news like magazines and various commercials. Doxa then dove into a rather low point and nearly disappeared as a brand, but recently they've bounced back and are now offering some really amazing sports watches. Many of their current modern offerings are very high-quality reissues of their watches from the past, including the iconic Sub 300, and even a more robust version called the Sub 300T that we reviewed here. Nomos is one of my personal favorite brands for a variety of reasons. The main one being the sheer value to price point they provide, but also because they're quite a niche hidden brand. Nomos also happens to be somewhat new in the watchmaking world, having been founded in 1990. You can read all about the brand's history here. This is a brand that's been flying under the radar for quite some time now, but recently they've had a nice surge of popularity, having been featured on some fairly prominent social media accounts and online watch magazines, so they might not be underrated for much longer. Nomos is our step into the world of somewhat affordable high horology with their stunning in-house designs and movements, with every little part manufactured, hand-finished, and assembled at their headquarters in Glasgow, Germany. Nomos is known for their sleek minimalist Bauhaus designs, somewhat comparable to Dunker's watches, but at a much higher tier of watchmaking, and with a much more elegant brand name, I might add. The watch that really started it all for them was the Tangent that was launched in 1992, and it remains to this day one of their most recognizable watches. They went on to create some of the most incredible watches, such as the Metro Deep Power Reserve designed by Mark Braun, which I proudly own and love, as well as the Orion line of watches that are very simple but make excellent dress watches, or smart casual weekend watches. If you guys like this video or this video helped you, please give the video a like. Links to all the products mentioned are in the description below. If you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Till next time, I will see you guys later.